In this episode, we're going to stray slightly further than Colchester. As the name of the video might suggest, yes, we're going up a bit to Stockport. I'm very pleased to announce they too now have their own council watch. Now, I've always maintained that the councillors we have in Colchester, on the whole, are a pretty decent bunch. We may not see eye to eye with them, but they seem to be good people. And people tend not to believe me when I say this. By the time you've seen the clips I'm going to show you from what they have to contend with in Stockport, I think you too might start to appreciate the councillors we have in Colchester that little bit more. So we start out with a member of the public just asking a few questions of the council on their climate emergency, about what was the evidence the councils considered before they declared a climate emergency. Because if you think about it, it is a little odd that councils up and down the country are taking it upon themselves to declare emergency. You'd think that would be something that the UK government would do. And they did in fact pass a motion to declare one, but then they never bothered to declare it, which seems a little odd. Also, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, they have never declared a climate emergency either. So when one considers the millions upon millions of taxpayer money that is being spent on these climate emergency measures, it doesn't seem unreasonable for members of the public to want to double-check the evidence, especially when one considers one's government and media's track record for telling the truth. Weapons of mass destruction, anyone? Stay indoors or you're going to kill everybody.
Over 800,000 years, global warming and cooling events were not instigated by carbon dioxide, but by Earth's angle and proximity to the Sun. My local climate action group have conceded that historically CO2 was not a trigger for warming events. A rise in temperature leads to a rise in carbon dioxide. However, the repetitive narrative still claims that the resulting and now man-made CO2 miraculously became the key driver of global warming. I have challenged them, and I challenge you, to produce one single, robust scientific study to prove this theory. Claims of consensus are not proof. Bearing in mind your legal obligations of public accountability and objectivity under the Golden Principles, why did you refuse a public debate on these matters? And what specific counter-evidence was shown to councillors in March 2019 from the plethora of dissenting experts, data-proven science?
And this is the rather curious response he got from the leader of the council.
For a debate and give a platform for climate change deniers. And I'm not prepared to do that. As long as I'm leader of the council, that will not happen. I will not see public money spent providing a platform for climate change deniers.
Now, you'd think this would be a wonderful opportunity for councils everywhere to say, here you go, this is what we looked at, this is why we are making the decisions we are making, and this is why we are spending all your money on that instead of sorting out potholes and the homeless. This is far more important. Here's the proof we're all going to die if we don't reduce the minuscule amounts of CO2 that we actually produce. And don't worry about all the people flying in their personal jets, which pump out more CO2 than our cars will in a lifetime. It's definitely your fault with your car. So as the leader of Stockport Council seems to have a little bit of an issue with his listening and comprehension, let's walk him through this slowly so that he can understand. You'll notice the member of the public started his speech by saying how much the temperature has gone up and down, depending upon the proximity of the Earth to the Sun. Now, that's not denying climate is changing. That is categorically stating the climate changes. What he is questioning is whether the minuscule amounts of CO2 that we produce have any effect on temperature. So I would ask the leader of Stockport Council and any council who might be watching if they could explain the following things. So you see this pie chart here? Can you see that tiny sliver that is CO2? And yes, CO2 is a greenhouse gas. But it's one of the minor ones. Water vapour is actually a bigger player in the greenhouse effect. But anyway, let's ignore that. Let's concentrate on that tiny sliver of CO2, the vast majority of which is not produced by man, is produced by nature. And the gentleman was absolutely correct when he informed you that the temperature rises before CO2 levels. So if you would like to elucidate us all as to how CO2 is pushing up the temperature when the temperature goes up first and CO2 goes up second, so how exactly is that pushing the temperature up when it happens after the event? If you'd like to let us know, that would be most helpful. Also, Twinkle, if you could explain this graph to us, this would be much appreciated, because this one just confuses the hell out of people. You see the purple line? That one, yes, the purple one. That is CO2. Now, look at the blue line on that graph, the blue one. That is the surface temperature. Now, do you notice that when the temperature, the blue line, yes, when that's higher, the purple line, which is CO2, that's a lot lower. So again, could you explain how CO2 is driving temperature over the millennia when it clearly doesn't?
But Mr. Mayor, the gist of all this is not so much a debate of ideas and evidence and being prepared to consider other people's point of view. I'm all for that as a Democrat. But what was behind the first question, I think is behind this, is the council providing a public platform for climate change deniers. And that, I steadfastly will not agree to.
Now, he states as a Liberal Democrat he's very open to hearing both sides of the story, when he clearly isn't. I'm pleased to say that in Colchester, our Liberal Democrat leader, Councillor King, is very open to a public debate, and he welcomes listening to both sides of the story.
That we would want to know and understand more, and that exchange could have a real benefit, including to the public. But I would want to be really clear about this, that the way that we work is respectful of the public and respectful of each other. Let me leave it at that. I look forward to conversation away from this building, and we look forward to seeing what we can do together to have that wider discussion. Thank you.
So I don't know what is wrong with the one in Stockport. He clearly has some issues here, but it needn't cost the council any money, because what we have offered in Colchester is that we will pay a minimal entrance fee to the debate to cover any costs, so you could do that in Stockport as well. And if, as it turns out, that you are completely incorrect with your assumptions on climate change being man-made, then think of the millions it will save your council and the taxpayers as a whole. A Stockport jumping on that particular bandwagon where they think that these electric bikes and buses are going to save the planet. I gather the people of Stockport have already tried to tell you that lithium mining, like any form of mining, really isn't good for the planet, but lithium is particularly harmful, as I've mentioned to our council on numerous occasions in Colchester.
Discover that a single lithium mine causes millions of tonnes of waste every year laced with sulfuric acid and radioactive uranium, polluting the water supply for 300 years, not to mention the unacceptable human costs with child labour to mine cobalt.
Of course, if you are a child-loathing psychopath, I guess you could say that at least the mining of cobalt, because no machinery is involved, is more environmentally friendly than the lithium. And what's a few children being crushed to death down a mine shaft when you can have electric bicycles everywhere? And if you do have them in Stockport, I wonder if they're as popular with the locals as they are in Colchester. The residents adore all the electric bikes and scooters, especially when they're deposited all over the streets, like dollops of dog turd. Now in Colchester they want to bring in electric buses as well. Will you be doing that in Stockport? And what could be better than something that spontaneously combusts and can't be put out for days on end? And let's not even go there with how bad for the environment the solar panels and wind farms are. We don't have time. Have we saved the planet yet, with all those trillions we're spending? And then on to the next one. Now he reminds me a lot of Matt Hancock. Are they related? See what you think.
Mr. Hatton, thank you for your question. I do reject, however, the conspiracy-based inaccurate content within it. I do believe climate change is an existential threat to our residents, and thankfully I believe this entire chamber of councillors is more likely to agree with me than you on this issue.
Your beliefs are adorable, sweetie, but what was the evidence that gave you your belief? I do hope it wasn't the BBC. But what about the melting ice sheets in Antarctica? Only the western side of the continent shows signs of melting. The eastern side is gaining ice. Curiously, the ice on the western side is mainly melting underneath the ice sheet. Do you really believe that this is due to fossil-fuelled cars and flatulent cows, or is it more likely that it might have something to do with the large number of active volcanoes under the western side?
There is a world of difference between being well informed by the mainstream media and properly well informed.
I'm very proud of the work that we're doing here at Stockport Council. We have debated climate change on many occasions across this council over the years, with members free to bring their knowledge to the debate.
Oh, how wonderful that you have knowledgeable members in Stockport. But how knowledgeable? Have they read the IPCC reports, and are they looking at the cherry-picked data that only goes back 800,000 years? How about the data that goes back 600 million years and shows CO2 levels at nearly 8,000 parts per million, as opposed to the 420 it is today, and oh look, the planet survived just fine with those higher levels? And if they're really knowledgeable, I take it they have read the ClimateGate emails, where they admitted that in order to get the rather startling and alarming hockey stick graph, they actually stitched two different data sets together, because if they just used the original data set, the data was going in the opposite direction. Do they know that as well? And presumably all your knowledgeable members are very familiar with the work of Dr. William Happer from Princeton University, who shows that if CO2 increases from 400 parts per million to 800, the thermal radiation, i.e. the heating potential, would increase by less than 1%. If you'd like to learn more, we did a whole video on this to Colchester Council called Vexing CO2, link in the description.
I wouldn't legitimise someone claiming the Earth is flat in the same way I don't when private conspiracy theories are banded around as truths.
Might I recommend you read this book? And I would guess the scientists involved in this one probably aren't flat earthers. Do educate yourselves, councillors. Proven yourselves being negligent because you haven't considered all sides of the argument. And potentially that makes you personally liable. I do hope you have a few million tucked to one side so you can pay the taxpayers back. So we salute you, Stockport, and we stand with you in solidarity. And I think you know what you need to do next time the voting comes round. Get shot of your council leaders as soon as you can, unless they can amend their ways. So do please head over to Stockport Council Watch, give them some likes, some thumbs up, leave them some comments, show them some love. It all helps get the YouTube algorithm going. And support them and share their work. Until next time. Take care.